have another algorithmic task. What we want to do here is if we're given the input, if we're given a list of numbers A, we want to output the smallest number in the list. So here I have defined a function. I called it smallest, and it takes in an input, a list as its input, and I start off with I being 1 here because I make this variable small e, I make that the variable that's going to hold the smallest element in the list. So we're going to check through all these elements and we're going to see which one is the smallest. So I start off with the smallest being the first element in the list, and then I just keep going down the list. And again, it's extremely useful if I want to see what's happening with my algorithm to print what's happening at each stage. So I could say the I value, and then I can see what the value is in the list. I could say a bracket, and then I could put a comma, I could put I, and I could say equals, and then I could actually put a bracket I, and then I could even see what the smallest, what this is smallest element, or smallest so far, smallest, and I could just print the value small e at this point, and it's going to tell me for each time I loop around what each one of these things is, what I is, where I am in the list, and what the current smallest element is, and it's going to help me understand what's happening in these two, or this if statement, this conditional. Okay, so let's see what happens when I run the code. So I have here, I called my function right here. This is the input list right here. And at the end, it really does output that -3, which is the smallest element in the list, that -3. Now, I'm looking through, right? Let's look through and see what it did and how it works. So first, it prints these values. So I starts off as 1, and it says that I1 is 12, which is good. The second element in the list is 12, and then the smallest element is 32 at this point. Now, that's just to start. That's before it does this, right? You could see at the end of the loop. So this is you could even make it very clear, right? You could say print beginning of loop, right? And then the end of the loop is over here, print end. And you could even see that if you print the small e, it's going to change from the beginning of the loop to the end of the loop. So let's see. So you see this is smallest at the beginning of the loop. So let's see what happens. And then if you look, so let's see what happens here. So beginning loop 1, right? This is loop 1. You have that the smallest element is 32 at the beginning, but then right before the loop ends, right here, the smallest element becomes 12. So let's make it a little bit more clear, maybe. Small e. Click enter. And then again, go back up, see how everything matches, right? So the loop begins, I is starting off as 1. I bracket 1, it tells you, is 12, or A bracket 1 is 12. The smallest element is 32 to start because small e just has this value right here. I didn't modify small e. Then it goes through this small e, it tells me that it's 32. Then it does this. It checks if this condition is true, and understanding this condition is key. Small e, right, is 32. We just saw that we have small e being 32, this value right here, right? That's what was printed right here. 32 is 32 less than a bracket 1, which is 12. Is 32 less than 12? No. So this is false, so this does not run. The else statement runs. All the code indented in the else statement. And small e is now assigned to the value a bracket 1, which is 12. So small e becomes 12 now at this line right here. Then I goes up by 1, and I print small e. The small e at the end of the loop is 12. This first loop ends, and then it begins in the second loop. And it says A2 now is 1. So now let's see, small e is now 12. Small e was updated to 12. So right here it's going to check, is 12 less than 1 now? Because now I is 2, and a bracket 2, if we look, is 1. 0, 1, 2. So this is 12 less than 1. No, that's false. This statement evaluates to false. The else code runs. And I have that 12, the small e, is now being assigned to a bracket 2, which is 1, and small e becomes 1. Then the I value goes up by 1. This loop, you see small e at the end? That's this right here. Right before the end of this loop, right? Small e is now 1. And then the loop goes to being that I is 3. And it doesn't change in this one, right? Because I bracket 3 is going to be 24. So let's see what happens in this case. So 24 is the third or the fourth element in this list. So I'm going to check, I'm going to look, I'm going to say, okay. So it begins, and then it says the smallest element is still 1. And then it checks this code. Is small e, which is 1, is that less than 24? And the answer is yes. So only I goes up by 1. The else code does not run. This does not run now. And then the loop just goes back up to the beginning. It ends. And then I go back to a bracket 4. And now a bracket 4 is negative 3. And then now is negative 3 less than, is 1 less than negative 3, right? Small e. Small e is 1 still. Is 1 less than a bracket 4 is negative 3. And 1 is not less than negative 3, so this code doesn't run. The else code runs. And small e now is assigned to that a bracket 4 value, which is negative 3. And that is the smallest element in the list. This last element, it doesn't change small e. Small e is negative 3. Your final value at the end is small e. It prints it here, and then you have your answer.